Hello everyone, I'm William Strife and welcome to the Heads Up Podcast, Episode 5, for April 28th, 2012. Alright, like normal, the first order of business, a new episode of Elements of Play is up over on Machinima. You can find a link in the description or click the video annotation. This time, the subject is humor in video games. I had a lot of fun writing this particular episode and editing it together. I hope you check it out and enjoy it, especially since I feel that it's a whole lot better than last week's video over voice acting. Now, moving on to the subject of comments, but before I answer any questions, I want to remind everyone to go ahead and upvote any questions that you think I should answer, because the more thumbs a question gets, the more likely I am to answer it. And if there's any particular question that you want to hear answered, upvoting a question that someone else asked is really the best way to get me to recognize it, and potentially answer it. Okay, this week's first question comes from Legendary Building. Not too certain how that last part is supposed to be said, but the question is, what is your connection between Kerosene Dreams and B10G.net? Alright, the reason why I chose this particular question to answer is because something came to light last week after I basically did a plug for B10G.net. It's come to my attention that some people have been misled into believing that B10G is some sort of a sponsor. And I'm gonna state this right out. I'll never plug a sponsor on any video that I put up on this channel. B10G.net is literally my personal blog, and the only reason why I bring it up is because I really don't have much of anything in the lines of people commenting or coming around to look at what I do. Granted, I'm not a blogger, so it's not too much of a surprise that anybody who comes in and looks at the snippets of posts that I put up won't be too compelled to say anything back. I understand that. But what I want to get across is that B10G.net is my own personal thing. I don't make any money off of it. I'm just putting it out there so you guys can look at it. So that's my connection to B10G.net. Now, my connection to Kerosene Dreams is kind of connected to Visage Guides. Most of you probably know this, but for those of you who don't, every single time I put a new guide out, there are two specific logos that are always seen. There's Visage and Kerosene Dreams. And Visage specifically refers to Visage Guides. That's the whole process of writing up the guide and all of the details and getting all of the content together. I mean, literally, the primary reason why a lot of people come up and watch the video and say, hey, that was really good information, that's the Visage side of things. And Kerosene Dreams is literally the graphic production side of it. Kerosene Dreams is responsible for all the video. Now, all of that being said, I run all of it. It's not like there's anyone else involved in this stuff. The blog, B10G is my personal blog. Kerosene Dreams is my visual effects studio, even though it's just me. And Visage represents all of the writing and putting together the scripts and whatnot for the guides. Now that that's cleared up, I'll move on to a comment that I really more or less want feedback on. I'm not going to straight out answer this. And it's from Javis586. He asks, will you ever start doing more Let's Plays for games like Skyrim and Fallout? If not due to your desire for quality over quantity, would you consider making a different channel specifically for Let's Plays? Okay, for those of you who don't know, some time ago, I responded to a specific comment somewhere on one of my videos asking me about whether or not I would do Let's Plays. And my response was literally, I don't do Let's Plays because I like to create quality over quantity. And as unfortunate as it is, Let's Plays, by and large, are created by people who want to get popular on YouTube without having to do substantial work. Just that statement alone is counter to what I want to do with my videos. I want to put a lot of work into them, and people watch as a result of that. And for that exact reason, I'm completely against doing Let's Plays. I don't like them, and moreover, I don't like Let's Plays and don't watch them myself because video games are about playing the game yourself, not about watching other people play them. That being said, I do realize that there are a lot of Let's Plays out there, and they can be enjoyable to a certain extent, and at the same time, my personal opinion on Let's Plays is not in any way representative of the way that other people look at it. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that I don't really like the concept of Let's Plays, and as a result, I don't do them. However, I have been getting a very steady stream of requests for quite a long time to do Let's Plays of games. And, I used to be absolutely stringent, no way am I going to do this, but then after I did the I think it was a 3-part Oblivion Let's Play. Each episode was an hour long. I've kind of softened up to that concept, and basically, to answer your question, Javis, no, I will never ever make another channel to put Let's Plays up. However, since you've asked this question, I'm going to basically ask everybody who listens to this podcast, what's your opinion? How badly do you guys want me to do Let's Plays? Because, in all honesty, they require substantially less work. It's really more or less a consumption of time for me. I play the game, I comment on it, and then I basically watch through the whole thing of what I've done, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this I can cut out. I can slash out this stuff. I got a lot of comments back on the Oblivion Let's Play of, that's really good. You didn't try to talk over the NPCs. You went and cut out the really boring stuff of selling off your items, etc., etc. And, I'm not a Let's Player. I learned a lot of stuff in that process. But what I'm asking right now is, how many of you want me to Let's Play other stuff? Because I'm not as against the concept as I used to be. That being said, it's not something that I want to go out of my way to produce unless there's a fairly substantial interest in me creating Let's Plays. And actually, on the subject of Let's Plays, there are a few scenarios where I really wish I was recording my gameplay of it, because I just felt like I was really clicking with the game. For instance, just this past week, I finally got around to playing Portal 2, and the character Wheatley had such a profound impact on me, I found myself talking back to the game as I was playing, in an English accent, ironically enough. And as I continued to play, I kept thinking to myself, wow, I wish I was recording this right now, because I really feel a connection with the game, and I feel that I would be entertaining if other people were listening to me. But I digress. That's not the point. Please go ahead, make your thoughts known on whether or not you think I should do Let's Plays that are, maybe 3 to 5 episodes long, and they're, those long 1-hour chunks a piece. I don't know how often I would create those if I did get into doing it. I'm just asking on a general basis, are you guys interested in me LPing things like Fallout or any other smaller game for that matter? Moving on to the next question. Alright, this question, or should I say questions, he has 2, is from Gone Rampant. First off, what's the Uncanny Valley? You mention it in the Fallout 4 part of your podcast. And second, what do you think of Assassin's Creed 3, and will you be doing guides for it when it comes out in October? Okay, I'll answer your question about Assassin's Creed first. Assassin's Creed 3 is a game that I have reserved already. I am very interested in playing it to see how things are going to conclude, and moreover, I'm actually hoping that Ubisoft chooses to finally end the story, because, let's face it, too much of a good thing can be bad, and I feel that they're dragging it out at this point, but I'm also very skeptical of Assassin's Creed 3. In my personal opinion, I find that Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is the pinnacle of the Assassin games right now, because, Assassin's Creed 1, it was a really great game, I loved it, even though all of the flaws that it had. Assassin's Creed 2 did a million things phenomenally better. I felt that Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, it fixed a lot of the things that Assassin's Creed 2 just didn't get right. And Revelations, I just feel like they kind of threw that out there to try to tie up the Ezio story to lead into the third game, like it wasn't really necessary, and they didn't do much of anything in the lines of gameplay. But as far as the series goes, I just don't feel that they're going to be able to top what they did with Ezio in Assassin's Creed 2, and how much fun it was to be able to manage your assassins in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. That being said, I'm still very interested in Assassin's Creed 3, and I am looking forward to it. As far as doing guides over it, though, don't count on it. I seriously doubt that I will even broach that subject at all. I like to do guides over very large open world games, and while Assassin's Creed is indeed open world, it's a lot more restricted in what you can do on a minute-to-minute basis. You can't, go out and pick up the weapon of an enemy and sheath it and, loot all of the stuff off of his body and whatnot. It's not the type of game that I want to do guides over. Now, your question about what the Uncanny Valley is. The Uncanny Valley is actually referring to a relation graph. This image specifically is the Uncanny Valley. It's your relationship between familiarity and similarity. So in the bottom left corner is, familiarity and similarity at 0. This is the same thing as looking at a rock on the ground. It's not human in any sense of the manner. And then up on your top right is where your familiarity and similarity are at their maximum. And this point is what we call human, a living, breathing, real, authentic human being. And the uncanny valley is this gap right here where the line drops below 0% familiarity. So over on the left, like I said, you have a rock, and then, you move up the curve, and about in an area like this, you find something like Wheatley the robot out of Portal 2, who acts distinctly human, but visually is clearly not human. This is the novelty area, where you can look at something like a talking dog and say, well, it's obviously fiction, and I can accept that for what it is. And then you get up to this point right here before you enter the uncanny valley. This is like your Final Fantasy characters in pre-rendered cinemas and everything. They're distinctly human, but they're far too perfect to look like real human. And what I mean by that is, they've got that perfect fair skin that's even-toned, their hair has nothing wrong with it, it doesn't go out of fray whenever they go into their action sequences. That's the closest you can get to human while still being distinctly inhuman. And obviously on the right side of the valley here, we have authentic human beings. Now, the valley itself is where you run into something like a walking corpse. Or a good example would be an animatronic robot that whenever it's standing completely still, it looks authentically human. But as soon as it starts to move around, and naturally it's powered by servo gears, which are mechanical, your reaction is, it gives you the willies or something. And that's the uncanny valley. It's where part or all of the micro details that make up a human being are missing, and it just freaks you out because you know exactly what a human should look like. You know how they act. That's the uncanny valley. It's that point where you're getting really, really human, but you're missing the very, very important micro details that make humans what they are. And you know what these micro details are because you see humans on a daily basis, and without even recognizing it, you understand the way that they gesture and the way that they move, the way they function. And as soon as you try to replicate a human and you're missing those features, that's where you drop into the uncanny valley. Alright, this question comes from Quix. Who is your favorite video game developer, your least favorite, and why? Oh, I should have figured that this question was coming sooner or later, but I'll start with my least favorite, and it's kind of split between two groups, Infinity Ward and Treyarch. And it's not that I think that they are bad developers, I think that they're good at what they do. They're my least favorite because I don't like how they're just kind of spinning their wheels, making the exact same thing over and over and over. For any of you who don't know what I'm referring to, Treyarch and Infinity Ward make the Call of Duty series. They trade off every other year. Basically, it was Infinity Ward making the Call of Duty series up until Modern Warfare 4. They just swap back and forth. And the reason why I don't like them that much is because they're not bringing anything new to the table. They're just kind of trying to rake in cash, whether that's their decision or the decision of their evil overlords over at EA, I don't know. Though I'm more than willing to bet that it's EA, hence the reason why I don't like them. But anyway, they are my least favorite. Has nothing to do with their capability to create games, it has everything to do with the fact that they're not creating new, different IP. But on the brighter side of things, my favorite developer, most of you probably don't see this coming, but it's actually Rockstar. Rockstar Games, the publisher, more specifically, because all the games that they put out, that they really throw their weight behind, have a lot going for them. The worst game that they put out that they really had their weight behind was LA Noire. And even then, the game was still pretty good, despite its downfalls. It did a whole lot of new things that were different and very innovative, very impressive. And this can actually segue into a question that came from Gaming Boy 10. It got quite a few upvotes. And he asked, are you a fan of the Grand Theft Auto series? If so, what is your favorite Grand Theft Auto game, and what are your thoughts on Grand Theft Auto 5? Since I'm talking about Rockstar, I might as well answer this question too. The thing is, I love Rockstar because of their Grand Theft Auto series. I was really, really big about it whenever I was young, despite the fact that I wasn't supposed to be playing it. I loved Grand Theft Auto 3, I loved Vice City to death. San Andreas wasn't really quite my cup of tea. I bought Grand Theft Auto 4 the day it came out. I'm very much so looking forward to Grand Theft Auto 5. I don't think they've put out a release date on that yet, though. But the thing is, I love Rockstar, they're my favorite developer, and as far as Grand Theft Auto 5 goes, I'm very, 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 very interested in it. Okay, moving on to the next question. This one is a fairly quick question and answer. It's from Turbocharged 2005. Why do you say Machinima as Machinima? Okay, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but Machinima is actually the improper pronunciation. That being said, it's what's popular. It's probably going to be the officially recognized way to say the word, but the reason why I say it the way I do is because of the etymology of the word. For those of you who don't know, machinima is actually a hybrid term. It is the combination of the two words machine cinema, because you're making cinemas inside of a machine or program. Thus you say machine cinema, machine-ama. You don't say machine as machine. And thus, the word is not supposed to be said machinima, it's supposed to be said machinima. Now, like I said, just because that's the accurate pronunciation of the word doesn't mean that that's the direction that the language is evolving in, and for that reason, machinima is not an incorrect way to say the word. But because I like the way that the word came to be, I prefer to stick with the accurate pronunciation of machinima instead of machinima. There's your answer, and a little factoid for the day. Moving on. This question is from Raging Panic. Oh yeah, rage while you panic. Go on. You do it, man. You do it. See if that really helps your kill count. Anyway, I've noticed that in your guides you show little to no emotion, but in your Heads Up series you seem to be a totally different person. Basically, do you try to sound professional on purpose during your guides? The answer to that is a combination yes and no. Sort of, I guess I could say. The guides are scripted, they're about facts, and I'm serious about them for that reason. The podcasts here, they're opinionated, they're just me reacting to questions and whatnot, hence the reason why I have a lot more emotion. Moving on. Okay, we're drawing to the close of this week's podcast, and like I said last week, I'll publish my top 10 list of games this time around. But before I get to that, I'm going to cover a couple of questions pertaining to the top 10 list. And I'm just going to cover these really quickly. The first request is from Mr. Danny FC22, who basically wants me to do shoutouts for games that don't make it into the top 10 list. And there are 3 games that, I was really fretting over whether or not to include them, and they just basically didn't make the cut for one reason or another. And just to cover them very quickly, and these games aren't in any particular order. There's Persona 4, which didn't make the cut for the specific reason that all of the games on the top 10 list are games that I will drop everything that I'm doing to go back and play because I think they're just that great. And all the games in the list I can and will play through start to finish. Granted, there are a couple of titles on the list that, they're way too open-ended to say that there's an ending to them. But for the most part, those games are titles I'm willing to pick up and play through start to finish. And, it's not a scenario of I'll pick it up, play it for a little bit, and then put it down and have my fix. Persona 4 didn't make it into the mix because I just cannot stand to go through the big grind process, and the only way that I'm willing to do that is by, activating cheats through GameShark or something similar to avoid the big grind fest, which is part of the RPG experience and going through the dungeons and whatnot. The next game on the list that just didn't quite make the cut is Fallout New Vegas. And the reason why it doesn't make it into the cut, really, there's only one major reason, and it is the fact that it's a free roam game that's kind of forcing you to be linear, and above everything else, it's got invisible walls in it. I just cannot forgive that, and it's the reason why it doesn't make the cut. And finally, the last game that didn't make the cut that I'll bring up is The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Now, the reason why Morrowind didn't make the cut is because the game is just way too big for me to pick up and actually play through in any sense that could be considered continuous. I mean, it took me, I think, 2.5 years to actually beat it the first time because I just wanted to find and do everything in the game. And that's just basically how I like to play the game. So, Morrowind would be on the list if it wasn't for the fact that it's just way too big for me to consider something that I can pick up and just really get into. That being said, I do go back and play Morrowind every once in a while. It's just much too large to fit into the confines of what I define as a game that is worth putting on this top 10 list. Okay, this other question is from 1S Allen, who says, are all of the top 10 games single player like The Elder Scrolls and Fallout, or do you have multiplayer games in there as well? And real quickly answering, all of the games are single player. And there's only one game on the list that has multiplayer as an option. Now, the reason why games that rely on multiplayer didn't make the list is because the real big focus for this list is the replayability. And because multiplayer is heavily reliant on a community existing for the game, as soon as the server goes down or, a new version of the game comes out, the community goes with it. For instance, the very first game that I ever heavily played online was Warcraft 2, but that was back whenever Warcraft 2 was the newest Warcraft game out. And as soon as Warcraft 3 came out, nobody was really playing 2 anymore, and World of Warcraft is out now, as well as StarCraft 2, and, if I went back and played Warcraft 2 again online, I would not get the exact same experience. It would be nothing like what it was like back in the days whenever it was one of the bigger games available on the Battle Network. This is also very evident on Call of Duty games. As soon as a new Call of Duty comes out, the old game, the developers, they no longer monitor the servers, and hackers run rampant on it. And for that exclusive reason, multiplayer experience, because the multiplayer experience is so fickle and you cannot replicate it further down the line, I don't recommend any games that are heavily reliant on multiplayer. Now returning to that question that Brad Wicked asked all those weeks ago about making my top 10 list of games, I'm going to start from the bottom up, and basically this list is split into 3 sections: the bottom 3, the 3 above that, and then the top 4. The bottom 2 brackets, the games are not necessarily in a hierarchical order. That is to say, what I name as number 9 is not necessarily better than 10. I find the bottom 3 games to be equal in my interest to go back and play them, and the same goes for the 3 above that. But the top 4 games on the list, those are in order of how much I am willing to go back and pick up each game right now and play it over again. So just keep that in mind. In the bottom bracket, the first game that I'll mention is Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. And this is a Super Nintendo game that was released back in, I think, 1996. This is a game that I've played through, I think, about 3 times in my life, and the reason why I love it so much is because it gets away from the old, trite Mario story. And the reason why that happens is because it was made by Squaresoft using Nintendo characters. And as a result, Square, who, has their own style of writing, really put a new spin on the Mario characters and put it in an entirely new light, and it was very original and very fresh for the Mario characters and series and kingdom and world and everything. And this is a game that I really think everybody should go back and play if they want to get a new outlook on Mario. And this game is actually where Mario got his RPG roots for all those games like Paper Mario and whatnot. But coming in at number 10, not necessarily better than number 9 or 8, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. In slot number 9 is The Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. And I don't really think that I need to explain why this game is on the list, but the entire point is that Ocarina of Time is a phenomenal game. It did so much, and it completely consumed my life whenever it came out. I remember whenever it was new, I was one of those kids where it was like, you go to me if you want to know if you're stuck in this game or something, because I knew where all 100 Golden Skulltulas were. I went through the trouble of collecting all 10 Poes out in Hyrule Field so you could get your hands on that last glass bottle. I ended up getting the top time on racing around the track on Lon Lon Ranch. This game was just such an enormous influence on my life as a gamer. And in the words of the GameSpot review, back when they were the old GameSpot, before they fell from grace during that horrible incident that involved Kane Lynch. This is the game that they're going to be talking about in a decade. This is the game that they will be referencing for years to come because it's just that incredible. And Ocarina of Time really is that to me. It does so much, so perfectly, and even though it's dated today, there are just no questions in my mind. You cannot pass up this Zelda game because it was just so progressive. It set so many rules. It pushed things so much further forward. Alright, now for the last game in the bottom bracket. Some of you may be surprised by this, but it's Fallout 3. And the main reason why it ends up this low on my list is because I'm more or less sick of the Fallout series. And it's not to say that Fallout 3 is bad. I will go back. I will pick it up at the drop of a hat. It's just, I've played through it so much, so many times, and seen all the quests over and over and over again. A whole lot of that has to do with all of the guides that I produced over the game. I'm kind of burned out on the Fallout series. I don't want to see it too much anymore. And there's also the fact that, you know, running around in a dilapidated, destroyed world has limits to how entertaining it can be. Like I said, it's not bad. It's just a personal feeling of, I don't think I can pick it up anymore. But at the same time, I'll still go back and play it, which is why it's on the list. I really don't feel that I need to explain any more about that. I mean, most of you already know why Fallout 3 is such a great game, right? Okay, now to move into the second bracket. The first game I'll mention is Fable. And Fable holds a very special place for me because it's the first Western RPG that I authentically played, and moreover, it's one of the few games that it actually completely gripped me whenever I played it. And I actually had no earthly idea what Fable was until I picked it up and played it. But more importantly than that, Fable is one of the very few games out there that completely consumed me whenever I played it. It came out whenever I was in high school, and I distinctly remember starting the game one night, and I was just so mesmerized by it that I ended up staying up way too late. And then the next day, whenever I went to school, I couldn't think about anything. All I could think about was coming home to play more Fable, to find out what happened, to get more of that fix, because the game just completely and totally blew me away. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Fable was really one of the first games out there that gave you the option to make a choice between good or bad, or, you know, basically influence the way that the game ends. Obviously, not the very first game out there, but it was certainly the first one that I played. Now, the next game on the list is Portal. The original Portal that came in the orange box. And hopefully I don't really need to explain this to anybody, but the reason why I love Portal so much is for several reasons. One, it's got very witty writing. Two, not a single bit of that game is wasted. You're only given as much as you need and every last bit is used. Three, I love puzzles. Four, it's got some really good dark humor in it. And five, it feels like an amateur mod for Half-Life 2. The fact that it feels like an amateur mod is a major contributing factor to everything else, because it really does feel like it was just a bunch of people who had this really neat idea, and they just kind of cobbled it together with just enough pieces, and then it just completely worked on all levels. In the words of video game reviewer Ben Croshaw, better known as Yahtzee, no one expected Portal to explode the way it did. And in my opinion, that happened because nothing was wasted, it only had what it needed, it was very witty, and it had some really good humor in it. And if nothing else, the song at the end was really, really entertaining. Now, the last game in the mid-bracket is Bastion, and this game holds a very special place for me for more than one reason. I haven't even owned it for a year, I've beaten it twice, I've also gone through the trouble of earning all the achievements in the game, save for the ones where you complete all the dream states with all the shrine idols active, that I found to be just far too difficult. But I remember watching a video review over Bastion, and just looking at it and hearing a couple of the things that the reviewer was saying and thinking to myself, that looks like a really interesting game to play. I wasn't even thinking, that looks like a really fun game. I just thought, it looks really interesting. I want to play that. And it turns out that when I watched the review, it wasn't available on Steam yet. So a couple of weeks later, I purchased it the day it came out, and I was just completely blown away. Everything from the music to the art design to the narration to the way the game played and even the story, it was all layered together just so perfectly that I was absolutely floored. I was expecting an interesting game. I was not expecting an amazing game to come up and basically punch me in the face. And that's what Bastion turned out to be. And it's those games that are absolutely unexpected, surprise of surprise experience that turn out to be my favorite, and Bastion is one of those games. And I love it so much that there's no doubt in my mind that I'll go back and I'll play through it probably 2 or 3 more times, because, you know, it's fairly short, but it's highly concentrated and a very, very good game. Okay, now we move into the top 4 games, and I am listing these in linear order of how much I like them and how willing I am to go back and play through each individual game. So coming in at number 4 is Half-Life 2. And God forbid if you haven't played this game, I think that it's sacrilegious, heathenistic, use whatever word you want. If you haven't played this game, there's something wrong with you. And the reason why Half-Life 2 is so important to me is that, you know, even though it looks good, even though the characters are so lifelike, even though the story is good, all of that is completely secondary to the fact that it's just, for some reason, the best first-person shooter I have ever touched in my lifetime. I can't think of a better first-person shooter I've ever played. Except for one, which I'll get to in a minute, but my point is, Half-Life 2 I've played through I think about 4 times. There's just something about its level design, the way it presents itself, the fact that it never takes control out of your hands. I really can't describe it, but Half-Life 2 has got to be one of those games that just, I mean, I'm left awestruck. I go back and I play it again just because I think, geez, I want to have that experience again. So that's what Half-Life 2 is to me. Hence the reason why it's number 4 on my list. Now, as for number 3, that spot is reserved for the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And the reason why Oblivion is in spot 3 is basically the same reason why Morrowind didn't make the list. It's because the game is just so huge that I can't really say that I'd go back to play it through to the end. But at the same time, I do play it more, even if I'm not messing around with the main quest, which I think I've only finished 2 or 3 times. But moreover, Oblivion is the reason why I built my first computer. Because the first time I ever saw it, I watched my friend play it on his Xbox for, I think, about 2 hours, and I asked, is this on computer? And he was like, yeah, it's on computer. So I went out and I bought the game. Got home with it, found out my graphics card wasn't up to snuff. Found out that I couldn't upgrade my PC because it didn't have a video card slot in it. As a result, I built a whole new PC in order to play it. It was the first time I ever built a PC. And even after having the game on PC and buying all the DLC, whenever I went out and bought my PlayStation 3, the first game that I bought for it was the Oblivion Game of the Year edition, because I couldn't think of a better game to play on a console. And actually, to this day, the character that I created on the PlayStation 3 is the only one where I've gotten all the stats maxed out and done absolutely everything in the game. I closed all the Oblivion gates on my own, the hard way. I mean, I did absolutely everything in the game. And thus, it falls to position 3 on my list. Now, spot 2 is the only game that has a multiplayer component, but at the same time, it's not at number 2 because I can play with other people. That game is Minecraft. Minecraft gets spot 2 because I cannot stop playing it. I have owned it for only a bit over a year, maybe 13, 14 months now, and I cannot stop playing it. And it's only gotten worse as other friends of mine have picked it up. I actually have a personal server that we play on and build in. And before you ask, no, you can't play on my server. It's for personal friends that I know face-to-face only. But anyway, I was enormously obsessed with Legos whenever I was a child. And Minecraft is commonly compared to playing with Legos. It's just, you know, the whole process of exploring a world in your own mind that really appeals to me, and that's the reason why Minecraft is a game that I cannot get away from no matter how hard I try. So, I spend gross amounts of time. If I'm actually not playing a new game, I'm probably playing Minecraft. If I'm not working on a video, I'm probably playing Minecraft. If I'm procrastinating about getting my taxes done, which was a bit of a hassle this year, I was playing Minecraft. I was doing exactly what I shouldn't do. Whittle away my time building tons of big, enormous, superfluous structures that will serve me no purpose, but I had tons of fun building. That's really what propels Minecraft to my number 2 spot on the list. Now for the number 1 game on my entire list that I will play again and again without question. BioShock. The original BioShock. There are a lot of reasons for this. It's got an incredible story, the gameplay is rock solid, it's first and foremost a first-person shooter that's injected with RPG elements, giving it a lot of flavor and color, gives you a lot of options for how you can play the game. The world and level design is that of an actual living city, so you aren't stuck in corridor point-to-point combat. You can walk around and do things as you see fit, you can hack consoles, you can upgrade your skills, you can find new tonics. Enemies will repopulate the halls after you kill them. The characters are very well fleshed out. There is incredibly good voice acting in the game. I love it. I love every last bit of it, and as a result, I have played the game no fewer than 7 times. And additionally, like I said, with Oblivion, I built a new computer to play that game. I built my second computer to play BioShock, because the first computer I built wasn't up to snuff to run BioShock. BioShock was designed to run on dual-core processors. The first machine I built had a single-core processor in it. And moreover, it's also the only other game that I have owned on my PC first, and then just bought it for my PlayStation 3 because I could, because it's just that awesome. In fact, whenever I was anticipating the release of Fallout 3, I played BioShock to kind of keep myself subdued because it has large amounts of 1950s aesthetic and nostalgia in it. But no matter how I look at it, BioShock is the best damn game I have ever played in my life, period. And that's my full list. So moving from the bottom up, it's Super Mario RPG, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, Fallout 3, Fable, Portal, Bastion, Half-Life 2, The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Minecraft, and BioShock. I'm interested to see what you guys think about that list. Okay, that's the end of this week's podcast, which has gone on a whole lot longer than I ever wanted it to, but I gave you my top 10 list, a couple of shoutouts, and explained why multiplayer doesn't appear on the list at all. Anyways, don't forget to comment, and I'll see you next week during the next Heads Up podcast. I'm William Strife. See you later.